quick access charge, or post your name and number to GB18 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 30th of January. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good evening. It's me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, on State of the Nation tonight.
We must leave the ECHR and repeal the Human Rights Act.
The push-me-pull-you Prime Minister cannot decide whether to go left or right. The Reverend Starmer has urged the European Convention on Human Rights to stop curbing members' ability to deport illegal migrants in order to stop the far right. Despite being the legal mind behind the ECHR handbook, it seems Keir Starmer is now using what he has previously called far-right ideas to stop the mythical far right. As Kemi says, it's time we left the ECHR. Also, the government wants to cut the 43 police forces in England and Wales down to as few as 12 in the name of efficiency. But do big forces work? Is centralisation the answer? Or is it time to move back to local policing with local communities? Also tonight.
If the message is that anybody that comes will be accepted, we are headed for disaster.
The Prime Minister's one-in, one-out deal with France has failed. But is a new Anglo-French entente cordiale emerging? Nigel Farage met France's right-wing presidential frontrunner Jordan Bardella yesterday to form a so-called patriotic alliance. Could this be a partnership that takes on the European establishment and wins?
A close relationship with the EU through our reset earlier this year. And yes, I do want a closer relationship than the one we've got at the moment. We are moving towards that.
Despite immigration being voters' major concern, ministers are in Brussels negotiating the possibility of a new youth movement scheme that could let in tens of thousands of Europeans to live and work in the United Kingdom. When will Labour finally admit it wants to reverse Brexit and take us back in the EU by stealth? State of the Nation starts now. To be joined by my most preternaturally perspicacious panel, the head of policy at Reform, Zia Youssef, and the political consultant and former Labour candidate, Kevin Craig. And particularly I want to congratulate John Redwood, our regular panellist, great man, wonderful hero of Conservatism, who's been given a peerage. And this is really, truly wonderful news. Congratulations to John. As always, let me know what you think, mailmog@gbnews.com. But now it's your favourite time of the day, the News Bulletin with Aaron Armstrong.
Thanks, Jacob. Very good evening to you. It's 8:02 here in the GB newsroom. Next week's planned strike by resident doctors may be averted after a new offer from the government. If union members support it, the 5 days of industrial action due to begin on the 17th of December could be called off. The offer addresses concerns over training places and covers extra expenses like exam fees, although it does not include any promises of extra pay. However, the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, has appealed for the deal to be accepted.
If they vote, as doctors vote, to end next week's strikes, we will move forward with that immediately in the new year. We can draw a line under the strikes, we can end the disruption, we can rebuild our relationship with doctors as we rebuild the NHS.
European leaders have held a joint phone call with President Trump to discuss the US plan to end the war in Ukraine. The Prime Minister, along with the leaders of France and Germany, discussed the state of talks, agreeing intensive work on the peace plan is to continue over the coming days. It comes a day after Mr. Trump called European leaders weak and hinted the US could scale back its support for Ukraine. Well, earlier the Prime Minister described Europe as strong when challenged by the Liberal Democrat leader Sir Ed Davey to stand up to President Trump.
President Trump's new national security strategy is a deeply alarming document. Quite apart from the irony of President Trump accusing others of trampling on basic principles of democracy, it repeats far-right tropes of civilizational erasure. So will the Prime Minister pick up the phone and make it clear to President Trump that any attempts to interfere with our democracy are totally unacceptable?
European countries, including the UK, have agreed to take a new approach to the continent's human rights treaty in an effort to tackle illegal migration. Members of the 46 member states will now work towards adopting a political declaration at a summit next May, which will make it easier to deport illegal migrants. It comes after Sir Keir Starmer called for changes to how the ECHR works in practice and how it's interpreted by British courts. Residents of a town in East Sussex have applied for a judicial review against the Home Office decision to house asylum seekers at a nearby army base. The government's plan to move around 500 migrants out of hotels and into Crowborough training camp has already faced intense local resistance. The government says it's furious at the level of illegal migrants and asylum hotels, but says it does not comment on individual sites. And tributes have been paid to Lance Corporal George Hooley, who was killed while on duty in Ukraine yesterday. The 28-year-old sustained fatal injuries in a tragic accident away from the front lines while observing Ukrainian forces testing a new defensive capability. Defence Secretary John Healey says George was an exceptional soldier with exceptional attitude and ability. His company commander in the Parachute Regiment described him as a model of professionalism, saying George didn't just do his job, he excelled at it. There's your headlines. I'll be back with more at 9 o'clock.
Welcome back to State of the Nation. The push-me-pull-you Prime Minister has changed direction again. Sir Keir Starmer, the human rights lawyer who wrote the handbook on how the European Convention on Human Rights would work in UK law, has called for reforms to the system he has advocated for so long. The Reverend Starmer is telling ECHR bureaucrats to stop inhibiting nation-states' ability to deport foreign criminals, not to protect the public or hand liberty back to citizens, but to stop the fictitious far-right. Who are these dangerous far-right extremists advocating leaving the ECHR? Well, they're Kemi Badenoch and Nigel Farage.
We must leave the ECHR and repeal the Human Rights Act.
We will leave the ECHR.
The legal framework the Prime Minister once defended as fundamental to British law, he now presents as an obstacle. Policies he previously believed to be far right, he is now advocating as a means to fulfil voters' desires to curb illegal migration, including allowing departures to third countries, which would have included the Rwanda scheme, which you may remember Labour abolished as soon as it came into office. Prime Minister, now is in power and trying to implement domestic policies, seems to consider the ECHR as simultaneously indispensable and obstructive, depending on the current political mood. But the fact remains, despite the Prime Minister's globalist ambitions for Britain, that the ECHR will not be reformed. It is an undemocratic, bureaucratic and supranational organisation built on legal frameworks designed to accrete power to itself. We just need to leave the ECHR, straightforwardly pull out to regain control of our borders and sovereignty to make our own laws. A nation cannot be properly governed by a system that has no parliament to legislate for it and no electorate to hold it to account. Leadership needs clarity and principle, something Keir Starmer is failing to show. Attempting to preserve allegiance to an international treaty whilst challenging its rules on domestic policy achieves neither. Prime Minister's declaration that the ECHR needs to stop obstructing deportations to stop the so-called far right illustrates that the government has no direction. There is nothing far right about wanting democratically elected politicians and bodies to govern the nation. The Prime Minister has repeatedly promised to stop the boats, but he hasn't. They've gone to their highest level ever. The bureaucratic utopia that Keir Starmer, the human rights lawyer, so emphatically believed in, has become the main obstruction to the aims of Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, the push-me-pull-you Prime Minister. It's time to accept reality, accept that the ECHR will not be reformed, and just leave. It's the only way this country, the United Kingdom, will be able to govern itself once more. As always, let me know what you think. Email mailmog@gbnews.com. But we've got a really exciting poll for you. This shouldn't be difficult, and there is a right or wrong answer. The question is, should the ECHR be reformed or scrapped? If you want to vote scrapped, look at the QR thingy on your screen, go to gbnews.com, you decide. But I can't believe after my monologue I haven't convinced you. Anyway, I hope I have, and vote now before you're reconvinced in the other direction by my panel, because I'm joined now by my most preternaturally perspicacious panel, the head of policy at Reform, Zia Youssef, and the political consultant and former Labour candidate, Kevin Craig. Kevin, I'll give you a little chance for a right of reply. But the thing that most concerns me about the ECHR and these international bodies is the question, how do I vote to change it short of pulling out?
Well, can I address that? But can I just actually go to the substance of what the Prime Minister has signed us up to? And I think it's quite a historic day. And I totally respect that others, you both of you included, believe that there's only one way to deal with the boats and immigration, which is to pull out. But the other view, which today is demonstrated by what the Prime Minister has done, is that we want to keep the international obligations that emerged when the ECHR was brought together, and that we can do that. But this text, which I hope people viewing and listening do read, because it's seismic in terms of it's really upfront about why the ECHR has to be reformed. It talks about tackling migration. It says in complicated language, it's OK to be worried about immigration and to want to fix it. And I'm really pleased that the Labour Prime Minister is leading the charge, whilst also respecting that you and others want out totally.
I read the text carefully. I also reread the text from 2012 when Ken Clarke had the Brighton Declaration.
Yeah.
The Brighton Declaration is interesting because half of it is about the procedures in the court to speed things up. And all the members join in on this, not just the 27 who've joined in on this one.
Yeah.
And they actually work. The court does speed up, to be fair to Clarke, it achieves something. But the second half of the declaration was about giving power back to the member states, proportionality and subsidiarity.
Yeah.
And that bit just hasn't happened. So I think it's quite hard to expect that this will be carried through because it's appealed by only 27 of the members and it has to be accepted by the justices.
Yeah. And look, the last thing I'll say, it's just the start, but I'm really pleased to see it, and I think it comes on the back of a number of other bits of progress on immigration, again, that have been happening. But I'm not saying we're there yet.
So, do you think Keir Starmer's trying to steal your clothes, and do you think he has a chance of succeeding?
Well, firstly, I'm sure GB News viewers will be absolutely delighted that they have permission from a bunch of unelected bureaucrats across foreign nations and including Strasbourg to be worried about immigration. I think that permission to be worried about immigration will mean a great deal to them, Jacob. Let's also be clear about what this is. It is a political declaration. By the way, this is the goal, right? Just remember, this is the goal, which is unlikely that you're going to achieve this. A political declaration around Article 8, which is the right to a family life that is routinely used to prevent the deportation of even foreign nationals who have committed, Jacob, the most egregious and horrific crimes. We're not going to get into them now, but GB News viewers would have be sadly well versed in those. And Then Article 3, which talks about inhuman treatment, again, a very similar situation. Forget about the inhuman treatment of British nationals, especially British girls, which have been, it's been in the news this week with multiple Afghan men who came here via small boat who have predated upon British children. And by the way, the goal is to get a political declaration, get 46 nations to agree, and even that would be non-binding, Jacob. Even that would be non-binding. So all Keir Starmer is doing, I'm afraid, is basically clowning the British people now. I think it's kicking sand in their teeth. And by the way, I want to make one other point, because we often talk exclusively about the ECHR, and we've done a lot of work on this. Yes, you absolutely need to unilaterally give notice that we are leaving the ECHR, and that's what Prime Minister Farage would do on day one if we win the next general election. But that's not anywhere near enough. We also need to derogate from a whole host of other international treaties, including and especially the 1951 Refugee Convention. So I just want to make that point too, because I don't want people to get lulled into this false sense of security that the ECHR is the be-all and end-all. It's a necessary precondition, but there's a lot more that needs to be done.
And you've then got to have a plan for how you actually use the powers that you've got. Pulling out of the ECHR, the Refugee Convention, just gives you power. It doesn't actually mean anybody leaves.
Of course. You need all of the above, right? So you need the ability to identify illegal migrants in this country. And by the way, again, we're not just talking about stopping the boats. Yes, of course, we'll stop the boats. We also need to deport the north of a million people who are in this country illegally already as a result of the successive governments that we've had.
Would you have the sort of hit squads that Donald Trump has had, who go in and just take people out, remove them? Would you go for an El Salvador solution? How tough are you willing to be?
Well, the goal is to deport everyone who's in the country illegally. Let's start with the foreign nationals languishing in our prisons. Let's start there. Then we start with the men. Basically, that's what we need to do. Look, will there need to be... So we've talked about creating a new agency, UK Deportation Command, and frankly, that's because we don't think Border Force and the Home Office, as they are set up culturally, are up to the job. That's the feedback we have currently. And UK Deportation Command, yes, absolutely, will identify people, detain them. We will dramatically ramp up. I mean, there'll be an unprecedented ramp up in detention capacity, modelled actually, to be fair, on what Trump did with steel modular structures in places like Florida, where he set up tens of thousands of new detention spaces in the space of weeks. That's what we would emulate. And then, yes, we would ensure that we have tens of thousands of people deported on a monthly basis. Will that mean that buildings would need to be raided? Yeah, absolutely.
Kevin, one of the problems is that this is a process that Labour's entered into after it's been in office for a time. But the nation feels there's an urgency in dealing with this problem. You very reasonably said this will take time.
Yeah.
Is there the luxury of time when Donald Trump has shown he could come into office and really change it in weeks?
Well, we're obviously different to the United States. And ultimately, the British electorate will decide in 2029 what they think about the government's efforts by then. I think the difference is that the Labour Party does agree that we urgently need to tackle, and it's the foreign criminals, undertaking serious crimes. That's in this text. And we are already doing things. Where there might be agreement between us here tonight is that this mess was a long time making by the Tories. And what the Labour Party is trying to say to people is, give us some more time and we will fix this, but in a humane and compassionate manner, and one which keeps us in treaties that we believe are important to this country. And I just respect there's a very good political debate to be had.
All right, I blame Tony Blair, not the Tories. But never mind. In a moment, the government wants to cut the 43 police forces in England and Wales down to as few as 12 in the name of efficiency. But do big forces work? Is centralisation the answer, or is it time to bring policing back to local communities? Thank you very much.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
I have the story here today. The brain has 5 eras. in it, and the adult mode doesn't start until the early 30s.
Yes. What it says is that rather than a sort of steady progression, your brain sort of changes at particular points in your life. So you've got phases of your life. So you change at 9 is the first point where your brain changes. Then it's 32 when adolescence finishes in terms of your brain, according to the study. Then you've got 66, which is where I've just got past. And then you've got 83. And then
what happens at 66? I'm asking for someone.
Asking for a friend.
You're asking for a personal reason. I'm afraid we start having less effective brains past 66 is what the consequence is. Some of the neural functions don't work as well. So it says here. Of course, even there are exceptions, such as you and me, perhaps.
No, I know there's plenty of things going wrong, yeah.
But 32 is the strongest overall shift in trajectory, it says here. This is a study that's been carried out, but I think Cambridge University have done
What
this.
happens at 32, asking for a friend?
You end up becoming more of an adult than you were when you were 31, apparently.
That's good. I became an adult last week.
Yeah, I know.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
I'm surprised they haven't, just made a discrepancy between male and female brains in this, because I don't think men ever grow up. I think the adult, wouldn't you? Maybe 66 is the way that men mature.
If they ever do.
Because your birthday's what, December the 3rd?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Coming up, Eamon.
I agree with you about not growing up. I mean, people say, what do you want for Christmas? What do you want for your birthday?
He wants a big burger from the Metro.
Men like toys.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. I'm still Jacob Rees-Mogg, and once again we were talking about the ECHR, and the mail mogs have come in, steamed in. A GB News viewer says the ECHR talks are more of Labour pretending to do something while they do nothing. And Jake says 27 governments begging the ECHR for permission to deport criminals. If you need any convincing of the need to leave it, here it is. Well, I think that was the point, really, that Zia was making, that in a democracy, you legislate, you don't ask permission from a grand organisation that isn't elected by anybody to deport criminals. And Brian says if the government has not the will to get us out of the ECHR, then let the people decide in a referendum. Well, I think the next election will basically be a referendum, because the right will be saying out and the left will be saying, waving the white flag, surrender. Anyway, the Prime Minister's one-in, one-out deal with France has failed miserably, but is a new Anglo-French political partnership forming. Yesterday, the Reform leader, Nigel Farage, met the leader of France's National Rally, 30-year-old Jordan Bardella, the frontrunner in the French polls to form a patriotic alliance to fix Europe and its border crisis. Monsieur Bardella said of Mr Farage, even though Britain is no longer in the European Union today, I consider him a great patriot who has always defended the interests of Britain and the British people. Well, could this be the alliance that takes on the European blob and wins? I'm very pleased now to be joined by the French journalist, Peter Allen. Peter, thank you for joining me. Could you just set out who exactly Mr Bardella is? Because he's become very important very quickly, partly because of a quirk in French law.
Yes, certainly. He has been around for a while, but of course he's only recently turned 30, so he's a very young man. He's somebody who has been a member of what was the National Front Party, the Front National, since he was 16. He worked his way up the party, and he is now president of the party, which of course is now called the National Rally, the Rassemblement National. The reason he has come to prominence so quickly is really because what I think would be fair to call the de facto leader of the National Rally, Marine Le Pen, has been experiencing a lot of legal problems. I was at a court case here in Paris earlier this year when her and a number of members of her party were found guilty of embezzling money from the European Parliament in Strasbourg and Brussels, of course. And the idea was that they were allegedly sending money back to Paris to use for party political purposes. There's no sense that she was using the money to gain for herself. But she is appealing sentence. But while that appeal is ongoing, she's officially not allowed to stand in any election. She's not allowed to stand in public life. And because of that, she could be outlawed, literally outlawed, from standing in the 2027 presidential election, which is the next one we have here. And that's where Jordan Bardella comes in. At the moment, he says that if Madame Le Pen stands, he would be happy to be her prime minister. But of course, he is Plan B as well, Plan Bardella. And that is that if Marine Le Pen cannot stand, that he instead will stand as president. And he's currently proving very popular, Jacob.
It's really interesting because Nigel Farage is always very careful not to meet members of the Le Pen family. And does Jordan Bardella make his party more acceptable, gets further away from the old Mr. Le Pen, now deceased Mr. Le Pen, whose reputation as a fascist was not a good one, to put it mildly, and brings right-wing French politics into a more sympathetic situation for reform, who would otherwise have been quite cautious?
That's certainly all part of the Jordan Bardella project. Again, we keep going back to his youth. He's only 30. This very high-profile court case early this week involving the higher echelons of the National Rally, he was completely absent from. He was completely clear from that embezzlement trial. And of course, the whole party has been undergoing a metamorphosis under Marine Le Pen since she changed the name to the National Rally. She ejected her father, Jean-Marie Le Pen, who was a convicted Holocaust denier and had lots of other unpleasant convictions against his name. And the party has said it has ditched all that kind of rather sort of post-war Vichy racism, a lot of it connected with Algeria, the Algerian War, and one of the reasons the party was first set up was because it wanted to hang on to the old colony of Algeria, of course. Jordan Bardella is somebody very, very different. He's from a very troubled Paris suburb, Drancy. That's very famous historically. That's where the Nazis entrained lots of French Jews to Auschwitz. So that has terrible historical connotations. He grew up in Drancy, and he said he experienced lots of terrible problems that he himself blames on mass immigration and the like.
Peter, thank you very much. That's extremely helpful. I'm now going to go say to you, this is really interesting from Nigel's point of view, that partly Nigel playing a role on the international scene, which obviously did as a Euro MP, but he hasn't previously, other than with Donald Trump. He hasn't done it with European leaders, but also the movement across Europe of the right becoming perhaps more like reform, more acceptable to the mass of voters.
Yeah, look, this is not hugely complicated, frankly. Nigel Farage will speak to people if it is in service of the interests of British people. We know we must stop the boats, and Prime Minister Farage will stop the boats. Nigel Farage is the bookmaker's favourite to be the next Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Jordan Bardella is the bookmaker's favourite to be the next President of France. So why would he not begin to engage potentially with a future President of France? And by the way, given the election is in 2027, in all likelihood, if things go the way we would want, certainly in the UK, Nigel will be the Prime Minister. And, you know, we've had years now, Jacob, haven't we, you can't possibly push the boats back to France. You've had Starmer, you've had Macron say you can't push the boats back to France. Well, now you have, as I said, the bookmaker's favourite to be the Prime Minister of the UK and the President of France saying, yep, you can push the boats back to France. And we've been saying for some time, one of the first things Nigel Farage will do will order His Majesty's Royal Navy into the Channel on a humanitarian mission to push those boats back into France. And I think the fact that, again, it's not just Nigel saying this, it is the potential, and by the way, in some of the polls I've seen, he's at 70%, Jordan Bardella, obviously a long way to go. I think that gives us a really good lens by which to judge the political failure of the boats continuing to come.
Indeed, but isn't there the question of Bardella being a French nationalist, he's going to do what is in the interests of France. And I've always had a sneaking suspicion that France quite liked the boat coming to the UK because it gets them out of France. And it's very hard for France to secure its border because of its commitments within the European Union and having a land border.
Yeah, and look, I don't doubt that currently with President Macron, and given that the British taxpayer and GB News viewers who pay taxes are currently sending, what's it, 700 million quid to France?
It was a complete waste of money.
I mean, more than a waste of money, I would argue, again, frankly insulting to the British people. We haven't even got that money back, despite boat crossings, just to address the earlier point about, yes, of course, the Tories have a huge responsibility for this, but boat crossings, illegal boat crossings, are up 40% since Keir Starmer came to power. So they're obviously not taking it seriously. The issue is getting worse. I want to make clear, though, we are not in any way resting on laurels here and assuming that, you know, that's the be-all and end-all. If a President Bardella or whoever the French president is doesn't play ball, the boats don't stop. Obviously, Operation Restoring Justice, which we have already announced, would mean that any illegal migrants who do make it to the UK would be picked up immediately by Deportation Command, taken straight to a detention centre. Their feet will barely touch the floor before they are deported back to the country from which they came. And, Jacob, we all know, anyone who understands human beings and incentives, that will stop the boats from coming.
And in terms of Nigel's dealing with the European right, will he be seeing the AFD next?
I would not expect that, no. And again, I think the risk here is that people read too much into this or overcomplicate it, right? Jordan Bardella is currently polling at 70% in some polls to be the next French president. It would be foolhardy, frankly, and unpatriotic for Nigel to not go and speak to him about this sort of thing. And again, the fact that potentially the next president of France says we can push boats back, I think, draws sharply into focus the claims for years now from the political establishment that that was not possible.
Kevin, it is interesting, isn't it? But does it say more about French politics or about British politics at this stage?
I mean, we're so far away from a British election. And what the two parties have in common is that they're both doing well in the polls at the moment, feeding off a lot of public discontent about certain issues. So they have that in common. Our government currently has got very good relationships with France. I think that's already paying dividends. And the Labour Party never says that things are anywhere near perfect currently, but some things are getting better. And to pick up on something Zia said, the government is taking the whole area very seriously. Some things like overall net migration are coming down in a really positive way. I totally would never argue the fact that the boat numbers are still a massive problem. But the government is working very well with France. There are new initiatives coming. You know, these are two parties on the right talking to each other, as they would.
It's a new field of the cloth of gold, I think, which you will recall was when Henry VIII met Francis I of France. Oh, come, all you faithful viewers, on Saturday the 13th of December in the bleak Midwinter, you are invited to join us for our Carols by Candlelight concert. I will be reading something. Oh, come, apply for tickets by scanning another of these QR codes on screen right now or by going to gbnews.com/carols. The concert will be broadcast with shepherds watching on Christmas Eve. And as you know, while shepherds watch the box by night or tune to BBC, the angel of the Lord came down and switched to watching me on GB News. The government wants to cut the 43 police forces in England and Wales down to as few as 12 in the name of efficiency. But do big forces work? Is the centralisation the answer? Or is it time to bring policing back to local communities?
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Heavy thundery downpours will continue to affect Cyprus as we go through tomorrow and into Friday, but this unsettled weather, it is going to ease as we head into the weekend. And actually, across many other parts around the Mediterranean, it's looking largely fine. Some decent sunshine to be had as well. Slightly different story, though, across much of Spain. A few outbreaks of rain around, and there is a band of rain sweeping in from the west, so that's going to turn things a bit wetter across Portugal and western Spain as we head towards the end of the week.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello again and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Fine for many of us for the next 24 hours or so. Less windy than it has been through the week so far, but there is another weather system on its way. It's going to bring rain to western parts later in the day on Thursday. It's slow moving though, so it'll take some time to reach eastern areas. Initially, we do have some rain for central and northern Scotland. That's going to ease through the evening along with the winds, so eventually it's all calming down a touch, and the lightest winds will be towards the southeast. That's where the clearest spells will be, so temperatures dipping here to 5-6 Celsius in places. Elsewhere, thicker cloud remaining, and in fact the cloud tends to thicken. The breeze picks up once again in the west during Thursday morning. We'll see some outbreaks of light rain into the Western Isles, as well as some patches of cloud elsewhere across Scotland, but a decent chance of sunny spells emerging through the Highlands into the Central Belt, the southern uplands. Eastern parts of Northern Ireland, a bright start, thicker cloud towards the west, and it's a similar story for much of England and Wales, always cloudier towards the west, but aside from a few mist patches, some decent sunshine through the Midlands, East Anglia and the southeast during the morning. It won't last because we've got another area of cloud making its way from the Channel northwards into southern counties of England. Best chance of keeping the sunny skies, East Midlands, eastern parts of England, for example, and feeling pleasant enough with another mild day expected, 12 or 13 Celsius, and a southerly breeze. That breeze will pick up in the west with outbreaks of rain moving into western parts as we end Thursday afternoon. The weather front responsible, though, slow moving across the country, and it's only going to be Friday lunchtime, early afternoon before it clears the southeast. Sunnier skies returning elsewhere for the rest of Friday, but also with some showers. Saturday starts fine, but unsettled weather returns later.
Bold. They are under no illusion. Ray. Are you a human trafficker? Boundless. I've had enough of the nonsense, and I'm not afraid to say it.
Don't get us on the BBC.
Every weeknight, I tear through the headlines.
The smell of gasoline. Should we be worried about it?
From Westminster madness to cultural war chaos.
What I'm going to do now, they are throwing things out the car as we speak.
Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Patrick Christie tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
The government is considering reducing England and Wales' 43 police forces down to as few as 12 in a bid to improve efficiency. But do big police forces work? Prime example of the downside of large police administrations is the Metropolitan Police, bureaucratic, expensive and unresponsive. So is this centralisation plan a good idea, or is it time to put policing back in the hands of neighbourhoods and communities? Well, I'm delighted to be joined now by the Police and Crime Commissioner for Hampshire, Donna Jones. Donna, thank you for coming in. Policing needs to be on a human scale, doesn't it, so that it can respond to the needs of communities, which is what you're trying to do in Hampshire.
Well, Jacob, you and I are people who truly believe in localism. We believe in true devolution. And what we're seeing from this government is quite the opposite of that. I am seriously concerned about the story that's yet leaked once again into the Times yesterday. Again, it had been shared across various outlets today about the plans for 12 big super regional police forces. Now, let's just take, for example, my force in Hampshire and the Isle of Wight versus the Metropolitan Police. 11 million people in London, one of the largest police forces in the world, certainly the largest police force in Europe. And we've seen knife crime in London go up 23% in the last year. In my police force, a historic, county police force, we have seen knife crime drop 27.1%. This is because I'm a police commissioner who has a grip of my force. I have a grip of what my chief constable is doing. I've reintroduced local bobbies. I've opened 8 new police stations in the last 18 months, and I've got 3 more I'm opening next year. And when you have strong local leadership connected to local people, what you get is much better outcomes.
And you're also in a size of the region where you've got resources proportionate to your problems. So if you go to these big regions, where I am in Somerset, all the money already goes to Bristol. If you have a bigger region, it'll just mean more money goes to Bristol and the rural areas get ignored.
Well, this is true. The urban areas suck up the police resource. They suck up the local police officers, firearms officers, public order for the protests, for example, in Bristol. And that really does leave rural communities really, you know, at risk, actually. Organised crime in rural communities is growing. Criminals will exploit all opportunities. But just coming back to what we have seen in the media and this announcement of clearly police chiefs across the country, and by that I mean the chief constables, have been working together with the Home Office now for over a year. 12 regional police forces proposed, and on the same day that they announced the police reform white paper was being pushed back until March, they announced that on Thursday last week. It's the same day that we had the announcement that the mayoral elections planned for next year, my area is one of them, also being pushed back. I think the Labour government could be moving towards announcement of regional government across the country, announcing it in the spring next year.
And this is really interesting because they've announced they're getting rid of police and crime commissioners.
Yes.
They've announced they're delaying the elections. They've announced that they're going to have now regional policing, and the regional policing would be run by mayors who would be also running the region. So you think that is what is happening. So it's about chopping England into pieces.
I really do think this is going back to regional government as we saw under the previous Labour government sort of 15 years ago. It didn't work then. I don't think it will work now. I don't think that's what English communities want. And whilst the Labour government are saying they're committed to devolution, what you actually get tied up in the name of devolution with regional government is in fact more centralisation, and I am against that.
But also with devolution, it's got to be devolved to an organisation that makes some sense, that actually the regions in the UK are of no interest to anybody. What region is Hampshire in?
We are in the southeast, just.
So who do you get put in with?
Well, we would be in with, I would imagine, Thames Valley Police and that area, so that's Oxfordshire, Hampshire, the Isle of Wight, Berkshire, Milton Keynes, perhaps even as far up as Northamptonshire. There is no connection from Northamptonshire to the people that live in Ventnor on the southern tip of the Isle of Wight.
And the southwest goes from Cornwall up to Gloucestershire, and the people in Cornwall aren't that concerned about policing or indeed administration in Gloucestershire.
And Dorset and Wiltshire. I mean, huge. The southwest is a huge region.
And England isn't a nation of regions. It hasn't been since the late Anglo-Saxon period. So it's forcing something on England that it doesn't want and reducing accountability. And with policing, taking it away from local communities, so people will never see a policeman if they live in a Hampshire village, will they, on these days?
And I think you could also introduce another level of bureaucracy, a Mark Rowley-type commissioner that would sit above the existing police forces. And we know why they're looking at doing this, because they made a commitment for 13,000 more police officers. They thought they could cut fat off the bone after the general election. Yvette Cooper failed to do that, and as a consequence, they're now looking at police force reorganisation in order to save money to fund their whim of these extra police officers. I just don't think it will work.
It's wonderful. In the Labour Party, if you fail, you become Foreign Secretary. We should all do a bit more failure. Anyway, in a moment...
We have got a close relationship with the EU through our reset earlier this year. And yes, I do want a closer relationship than the one we've got at the moment. We are moving towards that.
Ministers are in Brussels negotiating the possibility of a new youth mobility scheme that may let tens of thousands of Europeans live and work in Britain. When will Labour admit it wants to reverse Brexit and take us back into the EU by stealth? Very much so.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country. There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor. Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power?
Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber.
Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics.
We'll see where this ruling takes us.
These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, DC.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Gates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There, you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Is Labour again trying to reverse Brexit by stealth? Despite controlling immigration being a top priority for voters, ministers in Brussels for talks of a new youth mobility deal are possibly going to let in tens of thousands of Europeans to live and work in Britain. Earlier today, the Prime Minister was asked by Sir Ed Davey about Britain's relationship with the EU.
It will not succeed unless it gets our economy growing strongly again. And the best way to do that is a customs union with Europe.
We have got a close relationship with the EU through our reset earlier this year. And yes, I do want a closer relationship than the one we've got at the moment. We are moving towards that.
When will Labour admit it wants to take us back into the EU? Well, my panel is still with me. Kevin, this is semi-free movement, which is an odd thing to do when the electorate's so concerned about immigration.
Do you mean the youth mobility scheme?
Yeah.
No, I don't understand the choice of this story, because we issued last year as a country about 24,000 youth mobility visas. A much larger number of our younger people went abroad. This is a very distinct scheme. Business is crying out for talent to come in.
We've got 9 people in this 9 million people in this country economically inactive.
But we've got more people of our young people that travel abroad that come in. And I think in terms of the overall situation where under Labour overall migration numbers are being smashed, I just don't understand what the outrage about this would be. The broader subject of Labour wanting Brexit by the back door, no, we heard what the British people did, and it's not the time to look at that again.
So would a reform government offer lots of free movement to European students if it were to be elected?
No, of course not. And I think
that was one of my tougher questions.
Yeah, well, look, let's look at the numbers, right? Let's look at the situation in this country where there are 1 million young people in this country who are not in employment, not in education, not in training. That's close to all-time highs. And you look at so now this is effectively what they're talking about, is moving towards freedom of movement for example, young people. Let's define them as under 25s. The unemployment rate for under 25s in the UK is 15%. Do you know what it is in Spain? 25%. What do you think is going to happen? And I'm afraid, look, young people have been betrayed time and time and time again by successive governments in this country. What we need to do is stop tossing our young people in this country onto the scrap heap and just throwing them onto benefits when they're age 19 or 20 with no incentive to come off, and basically creating a highly addictive, a crack cocaine level addiction capability of the welfare state, and allow and get them back into work. And yes, you know what, Jacob? Reform believes young British people should have asymmetric access to the British labour market, and what Keir Starmer and Labour are doing is looking to encourage the opposite.
Kevin, isn't this really important? And isn't it difficult for Labour that Labour wants to control immigration, it wants to cozy up to Europe, but it finds every time it wants to do something with Europe, actually it undermines its domestic political agenda?
No, because the numbers are coming down. And this scheme, I mean, there's been polling that the British people, including actually, it suggested many Reform voters, like the idea that young Brits can travel more freely across Europe for study and work opportunities.
But they don't want it coming the other way, though, do they?
Interestingly, in the last 2 weeks in Parliament, you've seen some of the largest government intervention to tackle what we all care about, which is young people not in employment or educational training, than you've seen in decades.
But that, again, is a contradiction, because the government is trying to get young people into training whilst introducing an employment rights bill that stopped employers employing people, and we've seen unemployment rise in the last year.
Well, fortunately, the government saw the light on a panel of entrepreneurs tonight, saw the wisdom and has moved that back to 6 months, which is a great compromise.
Well, it was 2 years to start with. It was better off before. Anyway, we can move on to festive cheer, or not, because we're going to be talking about the Lib Dems, which will cheer you all up. In God's own county, in Somerset, the Lib Dems are looking to force a farmer to cull her reindeer, named Dasher, Dancer, Prancer, Harry, Camilla, Aurora, Blitzen, Arthur, Snowflake and Comet, after animal rights campaigners complained about her farm because they say she needs a zoo licence. Does Somerset Council want to follow Ebenezer Scrooge's example and eliminate anything festive and fun? And will the animal rights mob be responsible for the brutal slaughter of reindeer? Let's go to my panel. OK, if you do become a government, can you just do one thing? And that is stop mad bureaucrats making people's lives miserable, because that's what the rules say. Can we have some anti-rules law?
Of course, that's exactly what we're doing, Jacob. And actually, look, I'm head of policy at Reform, and I spend far more time, I promise you, inventorising laws that we must repeal than trying to create new ones. And this is exactly, I mean, I hope they don't embark on such a appalling suite of actions, but to be honest, Jacob, this stuff happens sadly every single day. I mean, almost everyone watching this programme will know this sort of milk monitor attitude. People who really have no business interfering in such a way, and that's at a micro level. And you can zoom out and look at all these quangos, look at DEFRA, look at, he or she who can injunct can basically prevent anything good from happening, and in this particular case, for example, actually bring a great deal of suffering to a lot of people for no good reason.
And Kevin, isn't this one of the problems with government, is that Prime Minister, not just this one, Prime Ministers generally, love jetting around the world and meeting presidents and making grand statements. But actually, people's lives, day in, day out, are made miserable by tiresome little rules. And we try and expose some of them here. And it's boring for governments to do. It's bitty. It doesn't get great headlines. Will you encourage your Labour friends to have a bonfire of petty regulations?
But the Prime Minister agrees with you, Jacob.
Well, why don't you do something about it? He's Prime Minister. We're commentators. He's got the power to do it.
Yes, but I mean, he's introduced a raft of measures to cut back on regulation for business, and there is agreement about this. I mean, I can't comment on the reindeers. That's outside my expertise.
Well, I'll tell you, I've got a statement coming up, but broadly, the council says it's DEFRA that has the regulation that describes reindeer as wild animals. So you're not allowed to farm them, you've got to have a licence. But the licence is the decision of Somerset County Council. And you just go round in circles with every bit of bureaucracy.
Who's the constituency MP now?
Oh, heaven knows, it's Yeovil. So
well, that's good. That's what they're there for.
That's
public service, the donkey work, excuse the pun.
It's a reindeer, not a donkey.
But one of the problems we have currently, Jacob, is DEFRA is a quango, right? And these sort of decisions, and this is half the problem. So unless you are willing to be brave enough to say, no, actually, those things should not be autonomous in any kind to the elected body. As soon as these quangos, which endlessly grow, as you know, hundreds of billions of pounds of their budgets now, and they act totally independent from the elected government of the day. And unless we are brave enough to change that, none of this is going to change.
And isn't that the problem? Kevin, aren't your friends getting very frustrated by this, that they see these things happen, they pull the levers, and nothing's going on. And this is where we need fundamental change in this country to get power back to our democratically elected representatives.
Well, change never comes quickly enough for people, but if you look at the NHS, if you look at schools, early years, breakfast clubs, reforms to the economy, the international markets, loving what Rachel Reeves has done, it's never fast enough for people. I get that,
the
but
NHS,
change is happening.
Nothing's happening with NHS England because the Treasury won't fund it.
Appointments, there are more appointments.
So appointing more people before they've fired the old ones.
More appointments for patients and waiting times are coming down. Yeah. I mean, change is grindingly slow, and the government accepts that, and the government is not doing well at the moment.
But will you accept that so long as DEFRA remains this quasi-autonomous unit, the Prime Minister and elected officials actually have no ability to even change? And I mean, actually, I'm really glad GB News have raised this particular issue. It's an emotive issue. There are actually some, albeit animal lives at stake, and some human happiness at stake. It's incredibly petty, but it strikes at the heart of something that's really important in this country, that, frankly, these sorts of decisions are no longer at the mercy of the electorate. Are you willing to say that Labour needs to change that?
I'm willing to say that any constituency MP worth their salt could get involved in this. You know that. You did the job for years.
He or she does not have the power to overrule DEFRA.
To bring people together and to make it a problem.
You can, as an MP, occasionally make people see sense. That is true. You can occasionally knock heads together in a gentle way. But the bureaucracy is very powerful. It's much better when it's ministerial decision, because ministers are subject to parliamentary embarrassment, simply. Anyway, we're very lucky. A Somerset Council spokesman has announced that Somerset Council did not rule that reindeer are wild animals. That is DEFRA's classification. Yeah. Somerset Council was made aware of a complaint which raised concerns about the Somerset Reindeer Ranch offering public access for events on more than 6 days a year. Isn't that outrageous? Aren't you shocked? More than 6 days a year, which requires a zoo licence. We will continue to provide, this is Somerset Council, advice and support and assist in any way we can. What, by slaughtering the reindeer? I mean, that's a hopeless statement, even by the standard of statements I read out. Anyway, Patrick, will you bring us some good news from Somerset? I've brought a bad news story from the county where the sun always shines.
Well, I suppose this might be some good news for the people of Somerset, that today is the day that Rachel Reeves finally threw the Prime Minister under a bus, so we're going to talk about all of that. Also, 40% of asylum seekers are still in Britain after failing their asylum claim, and about a third of them are just on the run. So all of that and more.
Warm and cosy, with a chance of zero visibility. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello again and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Fine for many of us for the next 24 hours or so. Less windy than it has been through the week so far, but there is another weather system on its way. It's going to bring rain to western parts later in the day on Thursday. It's slow moving though, so it'll take some time to reach eastern areas. Initially, we do have some rain for central and northern Scotland. That's going to ease through the evening along with the winds, so eventually it's all calming down a touch, and the lightest winds will be towards the southeast. That's where the clearest spells will be, so temperatures dipping here to 5-6 Celsius in places. Elsewhere, thicker cloud remaining, and in fact the cloud tends to thicken. The breeze picks up once again in the west during Thursday morning. We'll see some outbreaks of light rain into the Western Isles, as well as some patches of cloud elsewhere across Scotland, but a decent chance of sunny spells emerging through the Highlands into the Central Belt, the southern uplands. Eastern parts of Northern Ireland, a bright start, thicker cloud towards the west, and it's a similar story for much of England and Wales, always cloudier towards the west, but aside from a few mist patches, some decent sunshine through the Midlands, East Anglia and the southeast during the morning. It won't last because we've got another area of cloud making its way from the Channel northwards into southern counties of England. Best chance of keeping the sunny skies, East Midlands, eastern parts of England, for example, and feeling pleasant enough with another mild day expected, 12 or 13 Celsius, and a southerly breeze. That breeze will pick up in the west with outbreaks of rain moving into western parts as we end Thursday afternoon. The weather front responsible, though, slow moving across the country, and it's only going to be Friday lunchtime, early afternoon before it clears the southeast. Sunnier skies returning elsewhere for the rest of Friday, but also with some showers. Saturday starts fine, but unsettled weather returns later.
Warm and cosy, with a chance of zero visibility. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
This is your chance to become our biggest cash prize winner to date. £85,000 in totally tax-free cash could be making its way from our bank account to yours. It would be like having over £7,000 per month extra to play with each month for a whole year. That could be you, safe in the knowledge that